in 5 seconds. 5 over your life. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of CampusCare EdTalks, an exclusive platform where the stalwarts of education come on board and express their viewpoints on curbing topics related to education. Before I begin, let me quickly introduce you to Entab. We are a 20-year-old IT company engaged in providing matured and futuristic school ERP, CRM, and mobile apps to the top schools spread across India and help transform them from good schools to the great ones. Now, in today's session, we have a very special topic which is not only close to my heart, but it's also personal to most of the people I know. So, should kids with special needs go to a separate school, or should they be included in the same school? So, in today's session, we will discuss as we move forward what are the pros, what are the cons, how should it be justified, and for that very specific moment, we have three lovely guests with us. Our first guest is Dr. Lakshmi Kumar ma'am, who is currently associated with the Orchid School Pune in Maharashtra as an educationist. Her expertise spans from establishing quality schools, building teams, developing educational processes, and initiating best practices. Welcome on board, ma'am. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Moving forward, we have Mr. R.K. Bajpai, who's currently leading CP Vidya Niketan Kaimganj in Uttar Pradesh as the principal. With an experience of more than 3 decades, Sir has served as an ISC board zonal coordinator for more than 10 years. Sir believes in bringing positive change in the world by educating little minds. Welcome on board, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Next up, we have Mr. Suresh R. Lakde, Principal of School of Scholars, Amravati in Maharashtra. For his contribution to the field of education, Sir has received the MGS Best Principal Award in the year 2018. Sir specializes in teaching, academic, administration, exam planning, and result analysis. Thank you for joining in, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, before I begin with the webinar, I'm your host Himanshu Singh Rialch. I'm the head of marketing at Entab, and let me make a very wonderful plea with you that in case if you have not subscribed to the channel, please do so and click the bell icon to stay updated regularly. All right, on to the panel now. So, Lakshmi ma'am, my audience would love to know your opinion on should kids with special needs get a chance to study in normal school, or do you have any criteria or reservations for their admission? At the end, Article 14 of the Constitution says that right to equality.
We draw inspiration from the way we live in society. The minute we segregate based on any criteria and create exclusivity, I think we begin to see the fall of the society. And since schools do reflect societies, and schools are, as we would always say, a microcosm of society, to have any kind of homogeneity is anything that is antithesis to education. So, why would it be different for abilities too? When we talk about diversity and inclusion, it also includes abilities. And we often think of children with special needs as a particular criteria or a
Right.
particular diagnostic segment. Whereas we know that all of us, every human being has special needs, to take it as a very broad
Broad term.
focus. Yeah. So to kind of segregate them in the school system outside to have separate schools is about denying the very idea of an ecosystem of school, which should have multi abilities, multiple specialities, multiple special needs. And so I'm a very, very, very strong advocate of inclusive education. And I have been a practitioner for last 3 decades, even before the education department talked about inclusive education. And I'm not doing a favor by including children with special needs. It's my moral, ethical, and a legal obligation as an educator. How is it moral? Like I said, you cannot segregate people based on any criteria and exclude them. How
Right.
is it ethical? You cannot leave out a particular community based on certain criteria. And how is it legal, as you rightly talked about the act? So, in the school that I head right now, we have a resource room and we have three special educators. We have children with special needs into the mainstream classroom, and based on their very specific needs, they also have special resource room to go to. But I also understand there are children with extraordinary special diagnosis who might require a very, very special school. But we are not talking about those children. Children who are integrable, children who are educable abilities, and whether it is intellectual quotient or whether it is mobility issues or hearing impairment, visual impairment, or children with autism, all these are very, very important and integral part of any ecosystem. So we understand that teachers do have struggles in the mainstream classroom. So you need to have some kind of a balance of children with special needs and provide support systems within the school system. So you need to have some kind of a policy decision for inclusion and a strategy and a process for addressing their needs. Most importantly, we forget that one important factor of people without any special needs benefit equally by having children with special need in the classroom. It is akin to life. The real life has people with different needs in workspaces, and our children do get to be empathic, supportive, sensitive, and also learn skills of communication and working with children with special abilities in a group work. What better way than to give children the real taste of real life in the real ecosystem? So that's my sharing.
Wonderful, ma'am. And also, I guess it builds a lot of patience and trust and, somewhat of an advanced thinking, critical, analytical thinking in students' work, studying alongside with students with special needs. Well, that's my point of view. RK, sir, what would be your point of view for the same?
Sir, I firmly believe that all the children are same. They have different learning approaches. Being conscious educator, it is our moral obligation to understand the special need of the children to meet their educational requirements. It is seen that the children with the special need perform better than the normal cases, sir. So, in my opinion, there is no problem to admit them with the normal cases, normal students. Education is the fundamental right of every child,
Right.
not only the other child, even for the special cases also. Be ensured that every child must have easy access to the quality education without any discrimination on the basis of caste, creed, religion, and physical well being. Although disability is beyond the human control, we can minimize the trauma that the child has suffered physically and mentally. So I strongly believe that the disability cannot restrict the children to soar in the limitless sky if they are given the chance to grow in the normal condition. The children with special needs must be given chance to learn with all the students. So this will make them confident and relieve them from the mental stress that they are. In our school, we have developed the favorable conditions, infrastructure that support the children with the special need and encourage them to learn with normal children.
Right.
We have access to the physically challenged students who can join the school to learn with the normal children. School has been conscious about dire needs and requirements of the children so that they do not have any problem in the teaching and learning process. And one thing more, sir, I would like to say that if we create a difference between the normal student and such type of student, then there will be problem in the society also. So therefore, it's my opinion that all the students of the special need must join school in the same way.
Right. Uh, RK sir said the same thing. What about you, Suresh sir?
Yeah, so rightly said by Lakshmi ma'am and Bajpai. So I strongly believe that the human beings loves to be remain in group,
Hmm.
and no one likes to be excluded from a group.
Right.
Think back to our own experiences from childhood or the adolescence. Perhaps we were not invited to a party, or we wanted to go, or we were rejected by the member of a social group that you admire and wanted to be a part of it. To be excluded from a social group can bring up a feeling of isolation, anxiety, doubt, confusion, humiliation, loneliness, and sadness, among many other painful emotions, came out of the child. You rightly said that. I would like to quote here Article 24 of the United Nations Convention on the Right of Persons with the Disabilities. They declare that the state parties recognize the right of persons with disabilities to the education with the view of realization that right without discrimination and on the basis of the equal opportunities that state parties should ensure an inclusive education system at all the levels. But if the further states that exclude from the general education system on the basis of disability, and that children with disabilities are not excluded from free and the compulsory primary education or from secondary education on the basis of that disability, it would be an injustice with that individual.
Hmm.
The mandate is very clear. If you look at the Article 24, children and adolescents with disabilities have the right to be a part of regular classroom program, to have a reasonable recommendations made for them, and to have effective individualization support measures in environmental that maximize academic and social development, consistency with the goal of full inclusion. I would like to be outline several ways in which the important goals can be actualized. So I firmly believe that the children with special needs supposed to be a part of normal school. I can understand the school having a different environmental conditions, context, or we can say having a different kind of we can say type of school. So in some cases it is not possible for all to include the children with special need, but the special need where school can accommodate such kind of children must be accommodated in the regular school, what I personally believe. And we do not reject the admissions to the specific kids based on their special needs and recommendation by the special educators. We do accommodate the children depending upon the infrastructure and support system available in the school. We admit all the children wherever it is possible.
Right, sir. But Lakshmi ma'am, don't you think so? It's all subjective, to be very honest. Because if we talk about in reality, I mean, I'll be very honest. I have a brother who is who has a case of autism. He's autistic, and basically not autistic, but Down syndrome, right? And then there might be certain triggers that might make him afraid of something, And so, do you think such kind of things are, is it possible for a normal school infrastructure to accommodate such kids? Or should special things need to be, you know what I mean, right? You catch my drift, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
There is something called a physical infrastructure,
Hmm.
then there is something called an organizational culture. A lot of
Very
time,
true.
let's say, take the example that you have given, it probably doesn't require major physical infrastructure alteration, but it requires a huge paradigm shift in the organizational culture of inclusion. And a lot of time we have reduced schools to what we call the scoring agency rather than a social opportunity and socialization agency.
Right.
So, what we do is that even if we, let's say, admit a child with autism or child with extraordinary special needs, and as the board exam comes, a lot of schools weed them out because we believe that that's our sole agenda. Whereas, if you look at all the greatest educational thought leaders, have spoken about education as the most and the secondary most important socializing agency.
Yeah.
And if we don't include and we don't sensitize our children to include, let's say, a child with Down syndrome or child with autism, where the accommodation is not about creating a bench and a chair, but it's accommodation of understanding what the triggers are, and that, saying that, his trigger seems to be more visible. Who doesn't have a trigger? And that if we can create that climate, as I call it, the organization climate, I think that's more sustainable. And a lot of time, unfortunately, schools are about huge, fantastic, very masochistic, very enormous infrastructure, which is very, very, dominantly visible and impressive. And the second flaunting area seems to be that of what our outcome in the board exams.
Scores.
But between these two lies the real education of inclusion. So I think we need to put more focus on climate of the school, and the infra will fall in place.
Wonderful. And the climate of the school flows from top to down.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Bajpai sir, what are your thoughts on the same?
Sir, as I already told you, that we have made all the arrangements
Right.
which can help the student with the special needs. We have built such a unique atmosphere by training the normal student to learn with the children with the special needs.
और बाजपेयी सर एक सेकंड this is my वो not teachers can be trained, of course, because they are learned themselves. They can be uh, patience and everything can be provided, and like they can understand. बच्चों को कैसे समझाओगे?
Can I just come in? Just sorry to butt in.
Yes ma'am, yes ma'am, please.
Uh, I'm talking about a very concrete example. We've had student with autism, and in he with us till grade 12, and there were situations of meltdown or triggers, so to say. And believe me, children can be either very cruel or very understanding.
Right.
It's a teacher who sits down to talk about how do we understand this child's areas of trigger. Trust me, a lot of kids helped the boy cope up with his trigger moments or stepped back when they understood, and they understood that it is part of his diagnosis and syndrome and not anything to do with personal agendas. I think you can elevate children's social maturity with these dialogues.
Wow, that's actually thought provoking as well. But, ma'am, that age of adolescence and that age wherein we all know that bullying and everything is a part, right? So, Bajpai sir, how do you sensitize your students? Because that's
Sir,
all what will be required, right? It would be sensitizing your students.
okay, sir. Actually, sir, at present we are getting 3,500 students in our school.
Right.
So the number of the students they have problem, they have problem from the family side, they have problem from their friend side. So what we do, we counsel the students of such type of cases. We counsel them and we try to make a bridge between the family as well as the students also, so that they can cope up in all the fields.
Mm. Right. Um, Suresh, sir? Sir, you're on mute. Sir, you're on mute. Mute, mute, mute. Suresh, sir.
So according to me, what I believe that if you look at the national education policy since independence,
Mm.
it is giving thrust on inclusive education.
Mm-hmm.
But rightly said by Lakshmi ma'am and other panelists, the schools has become a scoring centers. So if you look at the need of the children, the school must devise some kind of policy how we can accommodate such children, and for that they need to do some very minimum arrangement they need to do. A huge infrastructure or very huge manpower required is not like that. We should have a minimum infrastructure with the right mindset, human resources. If you have a right mindset human resources who is basically ready to accept the individual as it is, in that case it is possible to have a such kind of kids in normal school. If you look at the regulatory authorities, whether it is CBSE, whether it is ICSC or any authority, it recommends to every school to have a special educator to be appointed. You have to take care for the children learning continuously. You must have a certain kind of assessment of the children in school. So this kind of children can be accommodated. Like what we do, we have a set of teachers particularly trained for dealing such students. Then what we do, we have a free IQ testing facility of such students in school, or also to identify their potential, identifying their needs, and supporting them for progressing further. So if school can make such kind of a pool of teachers, having a routine training for these people and focusing such kind of needs and motivating them, I believe the inclusive education or the accommodating special kids in a normal school would be a great success for all of us.
Right. Lakshmi ma'am, moving forward, there is a social consciousness among kids with special needs. That's very true, to be honest. Um, so, how do you build a free wall of communication channels to overcome this hesitation? Because I'll tell you what, uh, a child with special needs automatically gets connected to a child with special needs. They share because they share something common. However, there would be a wall of hesitation from going on from traveling the distance, or covering the distance from this side of the wall to that side of the wall. So how do you bridge that level of communication?
I'm going back to the entire ecosystem, and let me talk about four P's:
Right.
people, process,
Process.
policies, and programs. At the center of it all, and at the beginning of it all, and the end of it all is people.
People. Yeah.
You mentioned about children who bully, but we also have a huge repository of children who are sensitive.
Right.
So, we need to tap in the goodness of our community to sensitize them, to talk about, so that you have huge number of champions of inclusion. And the champions have to come from children without disabilities. If I start talking about the inclusion as benefiting for all, it's equally powerful than just children with special needs talking about it. It's about like we talk about, the LGBTQ issues. It's not enough that only LGBTQ community talks about it, but it's also people from the mainstream community needing to talk about it. So I put people as the first. And when I say people, it's all stakeholders, from the management to the policy makers to the parents to learning support assistants to fellow classmates to, I come from a mental health background.
Yes.
There's a very, very famous concept called therapeutic community. So in
Ma'am,
mental hospitals,
ma'am, could you repeat
sorry?
that? Could you repeat that, please?
It's a very famous concept called therapeutic community.
Therapeutic community. All right.
So, building therapeutic community helps every mental health patient recover, whether it is a ward boy or a warden or a security. Similarly, in a school system, we have to create an inclusive community. So this means whether it is an Aya or a Maushi or a Kaka or a security or a floor one or a lift Maushi, to the dance teacher and the art teacher, you need to enroll these people in the agenda of inclusion. And thus, your policies, whether it is about recruitment, whether it is about training, all must be geared towards how do I sensitize and empower.
Right.
It's a kind of yin and yang. It's
Yeah.
not enough to just sensitize, you also need to empower.
Empower. Right. 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 Right.
And the third P is the program, that where do you have children on par with each other? One of the things I've noticed is when it comes to children and performance on stage, oftentimes children with special needs are either made to stand as a tree or
Yeah.
as a tree, you know. But not realizing this, children probably are capable of a dialogue or two, probably capable of a dance and a movement,
Of so
probably
much
capable
more.
of an artistic stroke.
Yeah.
So build programs where also children with special needs also have extraordinary skills. Like I told you, this boy with autism was high on mathematical skill. He began to be a peer tutor for the class. We have to trust the children both sides. And the fourth one, as I had mentioned, is the process. The process of inclusion is not an overnight job, it's not a one time flash in the pan, it's an ongoing and a continuous process of inclusion. So I think with this 4P, I am quite confident that you do help children traverse this wall. And I'm not saying that we will provide a perfect world, you know, but our intent need to be genuine and our approach need to be genuine. And I don't see we will
Then
reach
only
the
this will work.
destination.
Ma'am, then only if our intentions, if our intent is not pure, if our, if our approach is not pure, then only, then I don't think so we'll be able to achieve that equal status of society that we always go for. Because why is there a, see, I so personally have a problem that why is there a need to call the child with special needs a child with special needs? There is no such thing.
Can I say that?
Yes, ma'am, Lakshmi, ma'am, please.
I know that labeling is disabling,
Right.
but also in a clinical perspective, labeling helps you to define your strategies for intervention. I mean, I need to know what your, diagnosis is. I don't need to know what you're not capable of.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have, let's say you are a child with dyslexia, then if I keep on expecting you to write the correct spelling, then I'm not aligning my expectation with the diagnosis. So labeling is disabling, but at the same time, in a clinical perspective, labeling can also be enabling, provided you align your strategies, intervention, your remedial measures to suit the child's diagnosis.
Right. So basically, you cannot judge a fish by its ability to climb trees.
Yeah.
That's why labeling is required. But until and unless it is for the positivity and for the betterment of the child, Otherwise, it's the whole negative practice. All right, moving forward, Bajpai sir, uh, the whole concept of teaching with special needs in a normal school is to attain social equality, correct? In your school, how do you ensure an equal and positive environment? Like you said, sensitization of kids. But ठीक है, let's say 40 kids are sitting in a row, and then there are two kids with special needs, or maybe one kid with special needs. Will those kids in your school try to encourage the other, that particular kid, ki, no, you can do this, you can do this? Or the story would be something else. But sir, what about you?
Okay, sir. Sir, we are well aware that the physically impaired students have a certain hesitation
Hmm.
when they mix with other normal students. To make them feel normal and confident, we organize various activities such like debate, drawing, painting, singing, games, and many group activities. We also ensure that their active participation in seminars, dramas, ceremonial functions to make them believe that they are the integral part of the society and the school. One thing I would like to say, sir, that when two students of such special need, they sit in the class of the 40 and 35 students. What we have trained to the students that they should treat them like a best friend. They should encourage them in all the fields. When they have a lunch during the recess time, they should participate, they should involve him in the different activities also, so that he or she should not feel that I am the student or the child of the special need. This is my opinion, sir.
And uh, let me tell you one thing as well, because it is not only in the east, in the west as well, this is a problem. I have seen many cases in the west as well, wherein a student, football quarterback, stood up for a girl who was in special needs because children used to bully her. So this is pretty apparent. Suresh sir,
Yeah.
how will your students react to students with special needs?
What I feel that there shouldn't be a hard separation of the students on account of their need
Hmm.
and in classroom teaching. First of all, the first thing is the peer, the classroom classmate of that particular class. If the classroom environment is very conducive, made by the teacher to accepting and nurturing all the kids in class. Number two, if the students are sensitized, bullying is a, we can say, a general nature of the individual student, particularly at this teenage. Bullying is directly it comes in. But if there is a proper sensitization of the students, and if it is imbibed in the mind of that student he or she is the part of your class and uh, believe that he is a member of your own family. If you have this kind of classroom environment, if teachers took care and the people in school right from top to bottom have that uh, uh, attitude to accepting and nurturing such kind of children, I believe that nothing is difficult. Second thing is when the parents come together, they talked all about the numbers. If you look at the special kids, by God grace, they have some strength. They have some unique qualities among themselves. If it is showcased, if the opportunity is given such students to express their views, to present their own talent, particularly on PTM forum, so it will automatically change the mindset of parent as well as, and everyone will start singing the same music. So what I build, sensitization, partnership, understanding, nurturing, encouraging students, all these things, very small things are there. But if you do it right from beginning, if you develop such kind of culture in your classroom, so I believe it is not difficult to accommodating such students.
Wonderful. All right. So closing remarks by very quickly. I'm sure all of you would be busy. That's why I try to keep it at 30 minutes. Lakshmi ma'am, closing remarks by you.
Uh, I I know where you're coming from when you're posing these questions of the real challenges of inclusion.
Actually, the practicality, because what no matter what we talk about,
But if we keep counting the challenges, we'll never progress ahead. And that's why, despite this being a law, despite it being a mandate, so many schools don't include. Okay? And I also know that sometimes children with special needs, when they enter the mainstream, there is an expectation from the mainstream teacher and the parent कि अभी सब ठीक ठाक हो गया है, that we expect the child to be performing in its normal this. So we need to remember that if a child has a diagnosis, those symptoms will keep popping up
right,
sometime. Another example that comes to my mind is that I remember my son's classmate, two of them had hearing impairment. And after some time, just because a child is in a mainstream school, sometimes the teachers would expect कि अभी तो you can lip read and you can understand, no? And also the parents began to say, but सब करवा दो ना इनसे, because a child is in mainstream and you get ambitious. That's something that we need to be very, very careful. The third and the last remark for me is that, again, school is not about scores. School is about creating good human beings, creating a cohesive society, and scores are just a coincidental or an incidental agenda. So again, let's refocus on building a community of people with empathy and inclusive attitude and good human beings. And what better way than to have children with multiple different abilities really being sitting in a classroom and helping each other? The pathway is not easy, but it's not impossible.
absolutely, it's not impossible. Very quickly, Bajpai sir, in 2 lines, closing remarks.
Sir, I'll let you know one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sir, when I joined the school,
Mm-hmm.
there was one student. When head boy and head girl came to me that assembly is ready, and I was passing through the gallery, there was one student of a special need. He was sitting in the class. So I asked him, why are you sitting? So head boy told sir the problem that. Then what I did, sir, I called that student and I went along with him and I asked him, can you tell something to the student? Sir, first time he sang a very good song. So all the students, they clapped for them, for that boy. तो मेरा कहने का मतलब है सर, जो भी वर्क किया जाए सोसाइटी के लिए, पेरेंट्स साइड से, टीचर साइड से, स्कूल साइड से, वो ग्राउंड पे सर दिखना चाहिए. इट्स माय ओपिनियन.
एग्जैक्टली, प्रैक्टिकली दिखना चाहिए, हवा में बातें नहीं होनी चाहिए.
जी जी सर, दिखना चाहिए ग्राउंड पे सर.
राइट,
तो वी आर डूइंग सर फॉर दैट.
आई एम श्योर सर यू आर. सुरेश सर, वेरी क्विकली, 2 लाइनों में.
Yeah, I personally believe that the students with disabilities add to the diversity of the classroom. Diversity enriches our lives, and biodiversity adds new medicines. Cultural diversity provide new ideas, and what I call that is neurodiversity adds new possibility that make for a more interesting classroom. Imagine how boring it would be if every student looked and acted the same in school. So I believe that the talent of this students supposed to be nurtured and platforms supposed to be provided to grow them.
Right. Thank you so much, Suresh sir. Thank you so much, Lakshmi ma'am. Thank you so much, Bajpai sir. And
Thank you,
all
sir.
those people who are watching us on YouTube, like Snehakant Bajpai ji, and Pranjal Yadav, Ashok Kumar ji, and Savita ji, Kuntal, Lakshman, all such people with such lovely comments for us, for you Lakshmi ma'am, for you RK sir, and for you Suresh sir. Thank you so much for joining us on this very thought invigorating and to be honest, a close to my heart webinar. So thank you so much everybody for joining me and Entab. It was a pleasure having you. We'll keep on having these conversations in the future.
We
Okay.
also
Thank you.
thank you for inviting us in
Thank
this
you.
webinar.
The
Thank
pleasure
you.
is
Thank you.
all
Thank
mine.
you, Iman.
I just love the format, short and crisp.
Yes ma'am, absolutely short and crisp.
Yeah, yeah. Thank
कोई
you.
बड़ी बड़ी बातें नहीं, सीधा point पे.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Right. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.